Ladies and gentlemen, there's a moment in your journey when everything shifts, a moment when the version of you that once waited, once chased, once tried to prove her worth, no longer exists, and that moment doesn't come when he finally texts back, or when he decides to care. It comes when you stop needing him to. Tonight, I want to talk about what happens when you rise, when you let go of waiting for someone to finally choose you and instead choose yourself, because by the time he starts to fall for you, really fall for you, you've already grown into someone who no longer needs him to, and that is where your real power begins. There's a moment in every dynamic when words stop working, when conversations turn into circles, when clarity dissolves into confusion, and when every message you send feels like it's chasing something that keeps slipping further away. That's when silence becomes your most powerful tool, not out of manipulation, but out of maturity. Your silence speaks in ways your words never could. It's not cold, it's not cruel, it's conscious. It's a decision to step back, to remove your energy from a space where it is no longer being honored. And in that space you leave behind, something begins to stir, not just in them, but in you too. When you go silent, you give them something they haven't had in a while, room to think. As long as you're filling the space with effort, reminders, questions, or concern, they never have to confront what life feels like without you. They get to enjoy your presence without doing the work to earn it. But when you go quiet, when you remove your energy and attention, you create an emotional vacuum, and that vacuum makes them feel the loss of something they may have thought was guaranteed. They begin to notice the absence. Not just the absence of your voice or your texts, but the absence of your support, your consistency, your warmth, and your energy. Silence allows them to sit with the consequences of their inaction. It confronts them with the reality that someone who used to show up no longer does, and when that happens, they start to wonder. They start to replay the moments they dismissed, the conversations they avoided, the little things you did that they never acknowledged. Your silence becomes a mirror, a reflection of their behavior. It shows them everything you no longer need to say. It's the emotional equivalent of drawing a line in the sand and saying, I'm no longer participating in a connection that doesn't feel mutual. But silence doesn't just affect them. It reshapes you. It gives you the mental and emotional space to see things clearly, to separate your identity from how someone else treats you. You begin to rediscover parts of yourself that got lost in trying to win their attention. You remember that peace is not found in their response, it's found in your ability to walk away from what's not serving you. Silence isn't just withdrawal, it's a reset. It's where your clarity comes back, your boundaries take shape, and your standards strengthen. And that transformation is magnetic, because nothing makes someone take notice more than realizing that the person who once always reached out no longer does, that the woman who once made excuses for them now makes none, that the version of you that tolerated half-hearted effort has disappeared, replaced by someone who respects herself too much to keep trying. What they do in that silence is up to them. Some will step up. Some will stay silent themselves. Some will try to return only when they feel you slipping away completely. But your silence is not about them. It's about you. It's about knowing when your words are no longer being heard, and instead of shouting louder, you simply choose to stop speaking. That quiet confidence is louder than any argument you could make, because when you go silent, you're not saying you don't care. You're saying, I care about myself more. And in that space, they're forced to decide if they'll rise to meet you or stay where they are. And either way, you win, because you've already chosen yourself. Your silence is the pause that makes them listen, the gap that forces them to feel, the distance that invites them to realize. And sometimes it's only when your voice is missing that its value is finally understood. There is something deeply irresistible about a person who doesn't need you, but still chooses to be with you, that kind of presence carries weight. It's not loud or attention-seeking. It's subtle, calm, and powerful. Independence isn't about shutting people out. It's about not losing yourself while letting someone in. And that energy, that sense of self-contained confidence, is what pulls people in more than anything else. When someone sees that you are whole on your own, they instantly understand that being part of your life is not a necessity. It's a privilege. You're not looking for someone to rescue you. You're not waiting to be completed. You're simply living a life that feels full and inviting someone into that space only if they enhance it, not if they fill a void. That's where attraction deepens, because what most people don't realize is that emotional independence makes you unpredictable in the most beautiful way. It means you're not acting out of desperation. You're not reacting out of fear. You're not anxiously waiting for every text or rearranging your life to keep someone interested. You have your own rhythm, your own passions, your own priorities. And when someone enters your life, they're drawn to how centered you are in your own world. You don't lose yourself in people. You bring your whole self to the table. And that's what keeps people intrigued, because independence brings with it a kind of effortless mystery. You're not rushing to overshare or to please. You're not performing to be liked. You're simply showing up as you are, knowing that what you offer is already enough. That's not arrogance. It's grounded confidence. Independence shows up in small, quiet moments. It's in the way you maintain your plans instead of canceling them the second someone becomes available. It's in the way you listen without needing constant reassurance. It's in how you enjoy your own company rather than constantly seeking someone else's. It's in how you hold your boundaries without apology, and that kind of strength, emotional, mental, even spiritual, is incredibly attractive. Because most people are searching for peace, for steadiness, for something real. And when you become someone who generates that within yourself, you offer the one thing everyone craves but rarely finds: emotional safety. Not the kind that comes from control, but the kind that comes from knowing who you are and not wavering just to keep someone around. You also stop chasing. When you're independent, you don't need someone to validate your worth. You're not operating from scarcity. You're not afraid of being alone because you've already found contentment within. That's when you become most desirable, not because you're playing hard to get, but because your life is too meaningful to center around someone who hasn't shown they deserve a front row seat. People sense when your attention is earned. They notice that they can't just drift in and out of your life without consequence. They feel that they have to rise to your level, not pull you down to theirs, and that challenge, when it's rooted in respect, not games, is what makes someone lean in. They want to know more. They want to be around you because being with you doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like peace. Independence doesn't mean you're emotionless or guarded. It means you have standards. You've done the inner work. You've taken the time to know yourself, and now you're not looking for someone to complete your story. You're looking for someone who wants to write the next chapter with you without erasing the pages that came before. It's not about being distant. It's about being defined, about knowing that your identity doesn't melt into someone else's desires. You can love deeply, care fully, and still be rooted in who you are. And that balance, loving without losing, is rare, and rare things by nature are magnetic. You don't demand attention, you command it, and you don't chase connection. You attract it, because you've become the kind of person who knows how to be alone without being lonely, who knows how to give without overextending, who knows how to stay open without becoming exposed. That's the energy that shifts dynamics. That's the kind of presence that people remember, not the one who is always available, always chasing, always bending. But the one who knew her value stood in it and let the world come to her, not out of pride, but out of purpose. There's a strange irony in love, how the moment you finally stop waiting for him to realize your worth is the moment he begins to. But by then, something has already changed. It's not just that you've moved on emotionally. It's deeper than that. You've outgrown the version of yourself that waited. You've stepped into someone stronger, someone clearer, someone who doesn't confuse being chosen with being worthy. At first, you cared deeply. You wanted it to work. You saw potential. You stayed through mixed signals, made excuses for his distance, and convinced yourself that if you were just a little more patient, a little more understanding, maybe he'd show up the way you needed. You were emotionally invested in something that felt almost, but not quite right, and that almost kept you hooked far longer than it should have. But time teaches you, silence teaches you, and pain, most of all, teaches you. You stopped trying to convince someone to see what you were offering. You stopped hoping that one more kind message, one more supportive gesture, one more wait for him to come around moment would change things. Because eventually something inside you shifted, not because he changed, but because you did. You woke up one day and realized you didn't recognize yourself in the mirror. You were shrinking to fit someone else's emotional availability. And in that moment, the version of you that begged for breadcrumbs died quietly. From that space, you began to rise. You didn't rise in anger. You didn't rise to prove a point. You rose because staying down no longer matched the person you were becoming. You started investing energy in yourself again. You poured into your friendships, your work, your passions. You rebuilt your self-worth from the inside out. You stopped wondering what he was thinking and started asking yourself what you truly needed. Not what you needed from him, but what you needed from yourself. And then it happens. The text comes in, the call, the slow reappearance. Maybe it's casual, maybe it's loaded with emotion, but it's always marked by timing, the kind that stings just a little. Because it arrives too late. By the time he starts falling for you, when he finally sees the value of the person who was always there, who showed up with open hands and a full heart, you've already risen to a place where that version of him no longer fits. You've seen too much, you've felt too unseen, and now you know what it's like to be whole without someone's half-hearted presence. He falls not for the woman you were when you were trying to win him over. He falls for the version of you that let go, that glows without his attention, that smiles without seeking his approval, and that's the version of you who no longer looks back. What he doesn't realize is that your silence wasn't a pause. It was a pivot. While he took his time figuring it out, you figured yourself out. You learned that love is not about being available to the wrong people at the right moments. It's about being aligned with yourself, with your values, and with someone who doesn't take your presence for granted. And now, if he wants back in, he's not returning to the same story. The plot has evolved, the character arc has changed. You're not standing still, hoping he sees your worth. You're walking forward, trusting that the right person already will. He may finally be ready, he may finally feel what you wished he felt back then, but the irony is that it took your absence for him to feel your presence, and it took your growth for him to see what he couldn't when you were trying. But now you don't try, you choose. You've become the person who doesn't need to be chased to be valued, who doesn't need to be convinced to be seen. You've risen past the point of needing someone who only showed up once you left. By the time he falls, you're not angry, you're not bitter, you just know better, and sometimes that's the most powerful place to be. The goal was never to make him fall. The goal was to rise so completely that whether he does or doesn't no longer defines you, because the woman who once waited is no longer waiting. She's walking, she's healing, she's building a life so full that only someone truly ready can walk beside her. So if he falls, let him. But don't lower yourself to catch him. You've already risen. Now stay there. Thank you.